up to the Mishnah on Pei Zayin Amid Aleph. The Mishnah says, Shachar v'loy kisa. As we'll see in the moment, it's a davar pasha. The ikar mitzvah of kisa adam is incumbent on the person who shechted. However, if you shecht and then you refuse to do kisa adam, you walk away. So shachar v'loy kisa v'ro acher. Another one sees this. Chayv l'chasos. Then the other person has to do kisa adam. In other words, it's obviously first come is the one who did it, but if he's refusing to do it, then someone else. Meaning it's not that you can't do it if you didn't do the shechita. We give him the first opportunity, but if he refuses to do it, then it's a mutal on any Jew who sees it. Now, kisahu v'nizgala. Let's say you do kisi adam properly, and then the wind comes and blows the dirt away, revealing the blood. Pater malachasos. You don't have to do kisi adam again. The Gemara is going to point out this is unlike, let's say, hashavas aveda. Hashavas aveda, if I return a lost object, then you lose it again. I return a lost object. I have to do it 1,000 times. Kisi adam is one time. Now, kiso haruach, but if let's say the wind covers it up, meaning I didn't do kisi adam, I shech the chicken, and I turn around, all of a sudden a big wind comes and covers it with dirt, chayiv l'chasis, then I have to do kisi adam. Now the Gemara is going to speak out when I have to do kisi adam, it's covered. I'm not obligated to brush away the dirt, they're not. But what it means is, if the dirt gets revealed, so we said before that if I do kisi adam and then the dirt gets revealed, I'm done. I don't have to do it again. But if I never did it, just the wind covered it and then the wind got uncovered, then I have to do kisi adam because I had never actually done kisi adam even once. Okay. The Gemara speaks this out. So we said in the Mishnah that the first line of chiyuv is for the person who shechted, but if he refuses to do it, then anyone can do kisi adam. Zak the Gemara Tanu Rabbanan v'shafach. V'shafach is the ma'isa shchita. V'shafach you shall spill the blood. V'chisa then you cover. The implication is the same person who's spilling the blood, the shaychid, is the same one who's doing kisi adam. Mi sheshafach yichase, the one who shechted should be the one who covered. Now shachav v'loy kisa. Now let's say he shechts, but he refuses to do it. He walks away. So then ro acher and someone else sees. How do I know the other person is obligated to kisi adam? Shemar va'omar livnei Yisrael. It introduces the parish of kisi adam with the words bnei Yisrael, which implies all of Klal Yisrael are included if the shaychid does not do it. Azhar l'chol bnei Yisrael. Okay. Another brisa based on the connection between the shchita and the kisi adam. So we said that the connection b'shafach v'kisa is the one who's shafach, i.e. the shaychid, is the one who's mechasa. The Gemara has a slightly different drasha. Taner idach b'shafach v'chisa b'ma sheshafach boy yichasa. You should use the same item that did the shchita to do the kisa. In other words, the hand. Because you did the shchita with your hand, you should do kisa down with your hand. What's the alternative? Don't kick dirt on it to cover it. Even though you're using your body to cover it, it's a bizayin. It's not a proper way to do the mitzvah. Says the Gemara, shelo yichasenu beregel, shelo mitzvahs bezuyus alav, because it's treating mitzvahs in a degrading way. Tani idach v'shafach v'chisa mi sheshafach hu yichasenu. As we said before, the shaychid is the one who does it. Now here's the question: what if the shaychid wants to do it, but I quickly jump ahead and I do kisi adam in front of him? He's really willing and able, and I steal the mitzvah from him. So there was a penalty. As the Gaonim point out from the next Gemara, this is a penalty that because you stole the mitzvah from that person, we penalize you. Now, how do you penalize? So Chazal sort of tried to figure out what is the value of a mitzvah. Now, obviously, this is not the value of a mitzvah, but they wanted to give a proper financial penalty that corresponds to what you did. So says the Gemara, the story goes that some person shechted, and his friend jumped ahead and did the kisi adam before giving him a chance. And Rav Gamliel penalized the guy that he has to pay the shaychit 10 gold zehuvim, which is a lot of money. Now, okay, again, it's a penalty. It's not that that's the value, but they have to, try to figure out something. So here's the question: Iboilu, schar mitzvah or schar bracha? Is the penalty corresponding to the mitzvah or to the bracha that is associated with the mitzvah? In other words, when Chazal are trying to figure out the penalty, are they looking at mitzvah equals 10 zehuvim, or the schar bracha equals 10 zehuvim? You say, well, what's the difference? Every mitzvah has a bracha with it. The answer is, what if you have one mitzvah that is associated with it 4 brachas, i.e. birchas hamazon? See, in the times of the Gemara, it wasn't like it is now where everyone benches. one person benched and everyone listened. Even as far as taka still like that, or at least it should be. I don't know the details of halacha, but for them, but conceptually, it's one person benched and everyone listens. So let's say we have a meal and I'm gonna pick you. I say you should lead the benching, and all of a sudden Alicia just jumps up and benches. And the problem is we're all done now. He stole the mitzvah from all of us. So the question is, what is the penalty? If it's 10 zehuvim per mitzvah, you did one mitzvah of birchas hamazon. But with birchas hamazon, because it has 4 brachas, each bracha has a bracha component to it, so you would have to give 40 zehuvim. So the question is, are the 10 zehuvim per mitzvah or per bracha associated with the mitzvah? And the nafka mina would be one mitzvah that has multiple brachas associated with it.
If you went ahead and I try to steal like the mitzvah and I start covering up blood, but I made the bracha, would that count? Or if you cover, you have to make the bracha?
Is there a bracha on kisadam? I don't think there's a bracha on kisadam. I think kisadam is covered by the bracha of shchita, if I'm not mistaken.
So what's the bracha here? Referring to the bracha of shchita here?
Oh, interesting question. No, that's the point. In this case, it's not relevant because this case is just a mitzvah. The question is, what about a mitzvah? Yeah, this is just a general question. I think in this case it's not relevant because this case it's just the mitzvah. The question is, if you have a mitzvah that is one mitzvah that has multiple brachas associated with it, so the question is it 10 zuvim per mitzvah or 10 zuvim per bracha? In our case, it's just a mitzvah. Again, unless I'm completely wrong, I don't think there's a bracha on kisadam. And because I think it's the shchita bracha that covers it. But the point is, if you have a mitzvah that's one mitzvah that has 4 bracha components to it, i.e. birchas hamazon, and then someone steals it, do you give 10 zehuvim? Do you give 40 zehuvim? That's the Gemara's question. So says the Gemara, L'may nafkamina. What's the nafkamina? Birchas hamazon. I amit schar mitzvah achas. The amit schar bracha have an arba, and you'd have to give 40 zehuvim. So the Gemara says the following story, and it's clear from the following story, I believe, that it is 40 zehuvim. What's the story? Tashema. There was a certain Tzeduki who had a public, like a vikuach. Vikuach, I don't know what they say in English. Vikuach is what they used to have, debates. They would have these debates between Jews and Goyim. So he had Rabbi, this Tzeduki got up and he'd have a public debate with Rabbi. And this was his taina. God forbid, there's 2 gods. There's the God of the mountains and there's the God of the wind. Who created the mountains? Who created the wind? Why? Where did the Tzeduki get this from? Because we say in bench in davening, Mishbaruch li yotzer harim. Tachsev yotzer harim ubayre ruach. So yotzer harim, there's a yotzer for the harim, and there's a bayre for the ruach. That was his taina. So Rabbi responded, Amar le shaita shvil sefer kra. Rabbi said, but look at the end of the bracha. What is the end of the pasuk? Hashem tzavakai shemai. It's all Hashem. Yes, Hashem has different terminologies when He creates different things, but it's all Hashem. Fine. Hashem tzavakai shemai. So Amalei, the Tzeduki said to Rabbi, so that was like a knockout punch for the Tzeduki. So how does the Tzeduki respond? So he says, Nakali zimna tlasa yomi. Like every story back then. I need 3 days. Give me 3 days. So, umahajali tiyufta, and I'll have a response. So Yosef Rabbi tlasa tanisa. So Rabbi spent 3 days fasting, which is very interesting because you'd assume that Rabbi was so brilliant, he would just, the answer is, he took this severity of this very, very... Yeah, no, but also just the Chil Hashem if Rebbe doesn't have an answer. So Rebbe spent 3 days fasting. So the Gemara says, Ki hava kaboy mivra. At the end of the 3 days, he wanted to eat. I can't even imagine 3 days fasting. I literally cannot imagine. So after 3 days, he was about to eat his meal. Amalei Tzeduki Kayabava. In the middle of the meal, there's a knock on the door, and they say a Tzeduki's at the door. Now it happens to be it's not the same Tzeduki, but Rebbe thinks it's the same Tzeduki coming to fight with him. So he said a pasuk, Amar v'yitnu b'barusi roish. They put bitterness in my meal, meaning like I'm trying to eat. Let me eat. So Amar lei, the Tzeduki said, no, Rebbe mevasa toivus anilach. No, I'm here with good news. I'm not the same Tzeduki. What am I here to tell you? Leiv matzah tshuvasei vecha. The Tzeduki that you were going to argue with, he spent 3 days, he couldn't figure out an answer. Enough min agagumes. He jumped off a roof. He killed himself. Meaning, so it's good news to you. So Rebbe hears this. Amar lo yiritzayin chashetisad atzli. Rebbe said, so come join me for a meal. You told me good news, which is a chiddush that Rebbe would allow him to eat at his meal. But he said, you were the deliverer of good news. You could eat with me. So Amar he said, great. La'achar sha'achal b'shasu. Amar so after they ate and drank, Rebbe basically did not want him to be there for the benching. So Rebbe said to him, Kaishal brachat hashoisa. Rebbe said, I'll give you a choice. You could stay for benching, or I could pay you 40 zehuvim. In other words, Rabbi was trying to say, Rabbi didn't want him to be by the benching. It seems that, I'm not sure exactly, I don't know why he didn't want him to be there by the benching. He didn't want him to, whatever. He didn't want to Baruch HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He didn't want him to be there. So he said, I'll give you a choice. You could stay for the benching, or I can give you 40 zehuvim. By the way, pause. You see that, he said, huh? But then they had a whole meal together. I don't know. I don't think it's maybe because of that. I don't know. Maybe. You know what? Okay, it's a good taina. I don't know. Maybe it's a good reason. I don't know. Whatever reason, Rebbe didn't want him to be there. So Rebbe said, I can give you 40 zehuvim. By the way, pause. There's your answer. The fact that Rebbe considered benching equal to 40 zehuvim indicates that it's the 10 zehuvim is not per mitzvah, it's per bracha. And because Birchas Hamazon is 4 brachas, it's 40 zehuvim. So the end of the story is, I like to bench, of course, as I once had a guy who came here, an old place. He came for, it wasn't Daf because we weren't doing Daf Yomi, but I gave a Gemara shir after Shachris. I can instantly tell the guy's a little off, and he's interrupting questions, which makes me very uncomfortable. Stam interrupting like a Gemara shir, and he's asking like about Adam and Eve, and I'm very uncomfortable. My father wasn't there, and remember afterwards everyone left. And he told me that he started learning the Talmud in prison. And I was like, okay. He's like, yeah, I just got out of prison. I was like, may I ask for what? Hoping I don't know what I'm hoping for. He's like aggravated assault. And I was like, Dad? No. So, but the best was that as he's leaving, he turns to me, he's like, I like it here. I think I'm going to come back every day. And I'm like, great. I found out who sent him, and I was like, hey, But the point is, it's just like, Rebbe's like, I'll give you 40 zehuvim. He's like, I like to bench. So the Gemara says, a heavenly voice came out and said, you see that Birchas Hamazon is equal to 40 zehuvim. So the point is the end of the story, that it's mamash equal to 40 zehuvim. So Amar Rav Yitzchak, so the Gemara just ends off the story that this Saduki family that stayed for Birchas Hamazon, by the way, it shows him a serious nefesh, that he was willing to forego 40 zehuvim. It's a lot of money in order to say by benching, to participate in the benching. So Amar Rav Yitzchak said, Adayin yesh no oisem mishpacha ben gedolei Romi. That family is still a prominent family amongst the Romans. V'karin oisa, and they call them Mishpachas Bar Livonis, the Livonis family. Livonis is lions, because of the interaction with the Nasi of Shevet Yehuda, Rebbe, they called them the Bar Livonius, which is a title that they got because of that story. Okay. Now the Gemara just speaks out a couple of the things that we said in the Mishnah. They said if you cover the blood and then it gets revealed, you don't have to do it again. In other words, Kisei Adam is a one-time mitzvah. You don't have to do it multiple times. So the Gemara says, Kasha, how come it's different than Hashavas Aveda? If I return the lost object and then it gets lost again, I have to do it again. We don't say, well, I've already did it once. You have to do the mitzvah as many times until it's done. So Kisei Adam, if the Indian is to keep it covered, I covered it, but then it got revealed, I should have to do it again. So he says, Da'amar ma'ar hashev afilu meish pamim. So Amarle hasam like ksiv miuta, hacha ksiv miuta v'chisahu. The lashon of the pasuk is v'chisahu, which implies, and it is covered, meaning once it's covered, you're done. The implication of the pasuk is that it's a one-time deal, as opposed to hashev teshivim, which implies present. It implies as many times as necessary. It also makes sense that the fundamental difference is that over there we want the item to stay by the owner, and therefore if you lose it 1,000 times, you got to return it 1,000 times. Over here, there was a mitzvah to cover the blood once, so, okay.
Would it also be each time you use it, it's a new mitzvah?
Correct.
So
Correct.
Totally different.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Says the Gemara, yeah, I would agree with you. Okay. So says the Gemara, Kiso Aruach. However, if the wind covers it, you didn't do the mitzvah, then you're chayiv l'chasos. So the Gemara just speaks out what I said before. It doesn't mean that when the wind covers it, I have to uncover and then cover. Because it says if the wind covers it, chayiv l'chasos. That implies that as it's covered, I'm somehow obligated to cover it. That's not true. What it means is if the wind covered it and then it got uncovered, now I'm chayiv l'chasos. So the Gemara just speaks it out. Amar Rabbi Chanan Rav Yochanan lo shanol shel chazav in his gala, lo chazav in his gala, patim l'chasos. You're only chayiv if it got uncovered by the wind. Says the Gemara, v'chi chazav in his gala, I have but wait a minute. I have the blood, the wind comes and blows it. Now, at that moment, when it's covered by the wind, am I obligated to do anything right now? No. The wind then comes and uncovers it. Now I'm chayiv. The sort of the chiyuv restarts. That's a concept called dichoy. Dichoy means that if there's a mitzvah that has a moment where I'm not obligated to do it, where it's rejected, so to speak, where the chiyuv goes away, it doesn't come back. So if I had kisei adam, say the blood is out there, I'm chayiv. When it gets covered by the wind for those half hour, whatever it is, for those half hour, I'm not obligated, and the mitzvah goes away. Now that the fact that it gets uncovered, but dichoy means once the mitzvah was rejected, so to speak, it was sort of removed off the table. It doesn't come back. So why am I obligated? What about dichoy? Yeah?
What's like the time frame we're talking about here? Is it like you come back the next day?
That's a good shayla, because someone asked me, someone by the Kiddush asked me that if you're able to do kisei adam the next day, then the whole discussion we had, it was Yehuda Weinberg that he asked me a good shayla. He said that if you're able to do kisei adam the next day, which I would think you're able to conceptually, I don't think there's a time limit. As long as the blood is there, then like the whole discussion we had a couple days ago on Yom Tif, that we don't shecht the koy on Yom Tif, why don't you shecht it and just tell him do kisei adam the next day? So I said, the Indian of doing the mitzvah right away is so significant that it's a greater factor. But the truth is, I don't know of a time limit.
I mean, like, if you come back a week later, you still
Conceptually, if it's still, I mean, it won't practically happen because the blood will dry and it'll be gone. But conceptually, yeah. So says the Gemara, Amra Papa, Zoyse Meres Ein Dichoy Eitzel Mitzvahs. You see from here that there's no such thing as Dichoy by mitzvahs. In other words, there's definitely a thing called Dichoy by karbanos. That's a thing. Dichoy means that if there's a moment where the item is ineligible, it does not come eligible again. So by karbanos, that would mean that if I have an animal that is able to be a carbon, it's a oilo, whatever it is, and then if for a moment it becomes rejected, it doesn't become back in. That's for sure. There's a shayla tanoim by mitzvahs. So you see from this sugya, ein dichoy etzel mitzvahs. Now, ma'ishnaha detanya hashayche v'nivla dam bekarka chayv l'chasos. What about, why is this different though? We said before that if the wind covers it, if the wind covers it, but it's covered by the wind, I don't have to do anything. But if it becomes uncovered, then I'm chayiv. But if it's covered by the wind, I'm potter, because it's covered. But doesn't this brisa say, Hashoichet v'nivla dam bekarka, if you shecht, and the blood becomes absorbed by the earth. Now, absorbed by the earth sounds like it's covered in chayiv l'chasos. So in other words, what's this brisa? In other words, really, what's the pshat in this brisa? Basically, forget about like the comparison. The brisa says that if you shecht and the blood just spills on the ground, but the ground just sucks it up, you're chayiv l'chasos. What do you mean chayiv? It's covered up. So the Gemara says hasam kirashu me'nikar. The answer is over there, although it is covered by the dirt, but you could still see the outline. It's still moist. Rishu me'nikar. That's why you could still cover it. But you're right. If it was taka absorbed to the point where it's just gone, there's nothing to do. Okay. New Mishnah. The Mishnah is going to talk about, very simple. You only have to kisei adam and dam, obviously. If dam gets mixed in, at some point, let's say with water, at some point it'll lose its damness and it'll turn into water. So the question is, when does that happen? So it says the Mishnah, dam shenisar b'mayim. You have blood that gets mixed in with water. Im yesh boi maris dam chayv l'chasos. It's very simple. It's about appearance. If it looks like blood, if it's still red, you chayv to kisei adam. So it's not like shishim, rove. It's just appearance. If it looks like blood, you have to do kisei adam. Now, nisar b'yayin. So let's say, for argument's sake, that's an ounce of blood in a gallon of water. It's not, but let's say that's the ratio. What if it gets mixed in with wine? You see, wine. It doesn't matter. It could be the same ratio. It'll always look red because it's wine. So the halacha is we don't care by wine and blood. We don't go by appearance, obviously. Then what we do is we figure out the ratio by water and we just input. So we figure out by water at what point would it no longer look red. If it will not look red 1 to 100, then that's the same ratio for wine. So it says the Mishnah, Nisarav b'yayin, roinoi sekilu mayim. Now, Nisarav b'dam behema. Let's say blood of a chaya, which is chayv and kisei adam, gets mixed in with blood of a behema, which is not chayv and kisei adam. So it's very simple. And again, don't tell me you go by the appearance because it's blood. So go to the next page. Oy b'dam chaya, or with blood of a chaya. B'dam chaya. I'm saying yeah. Meaning other blood. I'm sorry. My brain just froze for a second. Meaning you have kisei adam blood that got mixed in with blood that's not chayv and kisei adam. So the halacha is same thing. We figure out the ratio of water and we just input. Now, but let's say the ratio is 1 in 100. So if it's not 1 in 100, I'm potter. Even though it looks red, comes Rav Yehuda, and Rav Yehuda has the famous shita throughout Shas, min b'minayin loy batal. Rav Yehuda's shita throughout Shas is like-minded minim are not batal. It's not shaykh bittul when they're the same. Blood cannot be mavatal dam, and therefore, according to Rav Yehuda, it's a tremendous kula. Chumrah. It depends how you look at it. If you want to do a mitzvah, it's a chumrah. And that is, you could have 1 ounce of blood mixed in with 1,000 ounces of blood of a behema, you'll have to do kisei dam. Because what are you going to say? It's batal? It's not shaykh bittul by min b'mino. They're the same. And therefore it's not shaykh bittul. The blood of the kisei dam is always there, and therefore you always have to do kisei dam. Comes Rav Yehuda Omer, ein dam mevatal dam. Okay. One last halacha. Dam hanitas, let's say the blood splatters. Or sha'ala sakin, or it's on the knife. Chayav l'chasos. Meaning you have to do kisei dam. Meaning it's not, even if it's not on the spot where you shechted it, it's splattered, you have to do kisei dam. Omer Rav Yehuda, emasai, bizman she'ein shem dam elahu. Avliyesh dam shaloihu pater melachasais. Rav Yehuda's shita is you don't have to cover all the animal blood. As long as you cover some of the blood, the splatter is fine. So let's say you have a puddle of blood over here, and there's a splatter 5 feet away. You cover the blood over here, you're done. You don't have to cover every single splatter of blood. You do a kisei dam. I don't know the amount exactly; it doesn't really clarify. As long as you cover the blood that's in front of you, the splatter is fine. Okay. So we had a halacha when it comes to kisei dam that if blood mixes with water, it just goes by appearance. Same thing with wine, same thing with blood, and then Rav Yehuda min b'minei batal. So the Gemara says the exact same halacha, mamish the same, come out the same words, but not by kisei dam, but by putting blood from a korban on the mizbeach. I have blood from a chatas, and I can mix it with water. Do I put it on the mizbeach? Same thing. If it looks like blood, it's blood. At some point, it's water, and you don't put it on the mizbeach. So the same thing. Tanan hasam regarding blood of the mizbeach, dam shenesar b'mayim. You have blood of a korban that can mix with water. Imyesh b'maris dam kosher. If it still looks like blood, then you put it on the mizbeach. Nesar b'yayin, if it gets mixed with wine, roinos a kilo mayim. We figure out the ratio of water and apply it to wine. Nesar b'dam behema b'dam chaya, if it gets mixed in with non-holy blood of a behema or a chaya, roinos a kilo mayim. I'm just the same halacha. Comes Rabbi Yehuda, ein dam mevatal dam. Good. Rav Chia bar Rav Yochanan, an interesting halacha. Now, let me explain outside, and you'll sort of see it inside. We're saying right now that when it comes to blood and water, it's a ratio, as long as it looks like blood, it's blood. Let's say it's 1 in 100. The Gemara is going to clarify, it depends how it got mixed in. If the blood is in the bucket, it's the lower item, and water is pouring in, then that's the ratio of 1 in 100 or whatever. What if it's the opposite? What if I have a bucket of water and blood is slowly dripping in? What's going to happen is like this. The first moment it drips in, it's nullified. It looks like water. Another drip, still water. Another drip, still water. 5 minutes later, it's now going to look red. So we said before, you know what that's an example of? Dichoy. Because think about it. When the blood is dripping in, those first 30 seconds, 45 seconds, it's not blood anymore. It's lost its chiyuv. All of a sudden, enough blood accumulates because the blood is going into the water. All of a sudden, now it's red. Now the chiyuv comes back. So that's an example where for 30 or 45 seconds, it was rejected from the mitzvah in that the mitzvah was taken away, and now it comes back. So what did I say before? When it comes to karbanos, there's for sure dichoy. It's for sure a problem. Mitzvah is a machloikas. So says the Gemara regarding karbanos, Rav Chia bar Rav Yochanan, lo shanol shenafim mayim lo toch dam. This halacha that you go by the appearance, that as long as it looks like blood, it's blood, that's when the water fell into blood. Avol nafal dam lo toch mayim. But if the blood fell into water slowly, so for 30 or 45 seconds it looked like water, and then all of a sudden enough blood dropped in that now it looks red, so now the Indian comes back, Rishon batal, you can't put that on the Mizbeach because it was rejected during those 45 seconds. Now that's because we're talking about karbanos. But says the Gemara, Amar Rav Papa, Ola Indian kisei ein kain, but not by kisei adam, because kisei adam is mitzvahs. Ein dichoy eitzel mitzvahs. So by mitzvahs, even though for 30 or 45 seconds it wasn't red, but right now it's red, you could do the mitzvah kisei adam because ein dichoy eitzel mitzvahs. Okay. Now the Gemara says.
What about the idea when it comes to basal challah? If no drops, if one drop comes in at a time, it's
That's a derabanan. That's called matzah minas mina v'chayz v'neir. Those are takanas chazal. Pashtus chazal. Matzah minas mina, it's a separate issue. I think it's takana. I don't know. What we've had over here is this concept of blood in the water. Blood, right, looks red is blood, looks water it's water. We've had two of them. We've had kisei adam and we've had karbanos. Okay. Now understand this is Shmuel, so that you're talking about Namar. Says Shmuel, Kol Mara Admumis. If blood, as long as it looks red, it's blood. Regarding the following three halachas: Mechaprin, the Mizbeach, Machshirin, making food susceptible to tumah, right? Food is only susceptible to tumah if it comes in contact with a liquid. And Chayvim Bekisei, and Kisei Adam. Now let me just speak out two problems with, first of all, he's saying three halachas. Kisei Adam, Karbanos, and Machshirim. Now, first of all, Kisei Adam, we already had a brisa, a Mishnah. Mizbeach, we already had a brisa. So Shmuel's not coming to Chiddush. So those two he's just throwing in the list. The Iker Chiddush of Shmuel, as the Gemara is going to point out, is Machshirin. Now let's think about this for 1 second. What's Machshirin mean? Machshirin means that for food to become susceptible to tumah, it has to come in contact with a liquid. Which type of liquid? I'll give you a couple. Water? Or blood? So what is Shmuel saying? Shmuel saying is if it looks red, it's blood, but if it doesn't look red, it's water. Who cares? Either way, it's the same conclusion. If it's water, it's machsher. If it's dam, it's machsher. So the Gemara says, "Ma'ike mashmalan." First of all, what's the chiddush of Shmuel? Mechaprin tanina, chayvim kisa tanina. We already had Tanoic literature covering karbanos and kisei dam. So the Gemara says, "Machshir nitzachale." His chiddush is the hechsher tuma for that it comes in contact. That if it's red, it's dam, and therefore it's machsher the food. So says the Gemara, "Machshir nami, idam machshuri machshir, imayach shuri machshir." I don't understand. You tell me, oh, now it's red, it's blood. Now it's machshir. And if it's not red, it's water. So water is also machshir. So the Gemara says not all water is machshir. The halacha is rain. Rainwater is not machshir unless you want it to rain on it. Meaning if I have a bucket outside and it rains on the bucket and I'm not interested in the bucket getting wet, the rainwater is not machshir. So the case is I have outside of my house a bucket of blood and it starts to rain in the bucket. I don't want the rain to get in the bucket. So if, and now it's a mixture, so if it's red, it's blood, it's machshir. If it's white now, clear, it's no longer dam, and it's not machshir because it's rainwater. Now it's not a case where I took the rainwater and poured it in, because that's obviously, I'm interested. It's where it just rained on it. So says the Gemara, Lo tzricha shetamnu megasham, the case where it got rained on. So says the Gemara, Meisham nami kivin deshakal v'rami achshevenu. Well, if I poured the rainwater in, then obviously I'm interested. The answer is Lo tzricha shenidu aileh. No, it rained on it. Good. That's answer number one of why it's significant to know whether it's dam or mayim, because Pashas, we're talking about a mixture of water and blood. But we're talking about rainwater, so I didn't, and it rained on it without my interest. So if it's rainwater without my interest, it's not machshir. If it's dam, it is. So I have to know the difference.
Rainwater is that without your dust, that then.
Correct. Well, if it's enough rainwater that it no longer is red, so now the entire mixture has a status of rainwater without my interest, and therefore it's not machshir. That's answer number one, because we thought we were talking about a mixture of blood and rainwater. The answer number two is actually we're not talking about a mixture at all. We're talking about blood. Apparently the way it works is that, you would probably know this better than everyone else here, that when you have blood that coagulates, it separates, and you have the sort of the clot, and then you have a clearish liquid. So the case is, it's separated, and we're trying to figure out, is that clear liquid, it's not mayim, right? So for hechsher, is it dam? That a fruit touched that clear liquid after it coagulated and the clot separated. So the question is the apple roy l'kabel tuma? So you say, well, why? It's not mayim. Of course it's not mayim, it's blood. You'll say, but is it blood though? It's not red. So the answer is, if that not clearish liquid is red, it's still dam. If it's not red, then you're right. It's nothing. I don't know what it is. It's just dam light, I don't know, and it's not machshir. That's the case. It's not a mixture. It's actually talking about dam separating, and we're trying to figure out, is the liquid still considered dam? The answer is, if it looks red, then it's dam. If it's not, not. Says the Gemara, Rav Asi menar bil oimer b'tzalelta dedama. We're talking about the clear of the blood. Just to finish, I want to get to the Mishnah very, very quickly. So says the Gemara, Rav Yirmiyah medifti omar onush kares. If you taka drink that liquid, you're chayiv kares for drinking dam, but who de'ika kazayis? You hear that, right? Okay. All right. Oh, it's outside? Thank God. Who did a kazayas? The answer is, but there has to be a kazayas of the actual blood. Meaning, even if it's red, you're not chayiv kares unless you actually drink a kazayas of the blood clot to be chayiv kares. So even if it's red, it's going to be aser, but kares will only be with the actual ikar adam. Similarly, who did masisin tana metamer ba'oil? If it comes from a dead body, this clearish liquid but looks red, it's matama ba'oil, revius, but there has to be pure blood or revius of pure blood in that mixture in order to be matama ba'oil. Now, just one quick halacha. Tanan hasam, because we mentioned this clearish liquid that comes off that's still red, whether it's considered dam, so the Gemara says, so the Gemara says, so the Gemara says this concept comes up in the following way. It's just very big kids. I'll say it outside, we'll say it inside. The halacha is, the pasuk basically tells us very clearly that a zav, the liquid that comes out of a zav, i.e. the zava liquid, or his spittle, is matama. It's matama. The question is, what about liquid that comes out of a dead body? Tears that come out of a dead body, the milk that came out of a woman who passed away. Is it also matama? Because it's never really talked about in the Torah. The only thing the Torah really talks about is the body of the dead body, or the liquids of spittle and saliva of a zav and a nida. Those are the only really liquids that are talked about. So liquids that come out of a dead body, like the tears that come out of a dead body, now obviously not touching the dead body, to touch the liquid is a metama. So tnan hasam, kol mashka hames tahirin, it's tahar. And as we'll see in the Gemara is going to point out, even though Chazal might have made other gzeres, they did not make gzeres by this. The reason being is because they understood people are so naturally distance themselves from dead bodies because the tumah is so severe. They didn't need to create a harchaka by this. Says the Gemara, chutz midama, except for the blood. Obviously, the blood is the only liquid that comes out of a dead body. That's mitama. V'chol mari admu mishaboy mitama ba'oil. And any blood that this liquid that we were referring to, if it looks red, it's mitama ba'oil. That's why it brought down. Now that we mentioned this, let's just finish up. The liquid that comes out of a dead body, let's say the tears that come out of a dead body, or whatever, milk that comes out of a woman, it's not matama. Is that true? Umashka meis tahirin, or many, I have a contradiction. Now, the Brisa never said outright not like that, but this is the Brisa says, mashka tful yoim. Any liquid that comes out, that comes out of a tful yoim, it's like he touches it. In other words, a tful yoim is someone who's already tahar. He's just waiting for nightfall. So the halacha is that anything that comes out of him is tahar. Okay, that's fine. Ve'elu ein metamin. This is the line. V'shar kol hatmein. But all other tamei sources. Okay, we're trying to figure out dead bodies. So we said tful yoim, liquid that comes out of him, not tamei for sure. Put that on the side. But then the Brisa says any other tamei sources, bein kalin, bein chamurim, both kal and chamer. Chamer kind of sounds like a dead body, but fine. Both kal and chamer. The water that comes out of them is tameh, and it's a rishon for the laws of tumah, except for the spittle and saliva of a zav, which is even higher. The point is, though, it says that the liquid that comes out of kalin and chamurin are tameh. What's kalin chamurin? My kalin, my chamurin. My lav kalin is sheretz v'zav, and chamurin is mace. Chamurin is always mace, so it kind of sounds like the liquid that comes out of a mace is takatame. So the Gemara says, "Loi kalin sheretz v'chamurin zav." No. The kalin is the tears of someone who touched a sheretz, and the chamurin is the tears of someone who touched a zav. So in other words, what it comes out of this is that the tears that come out of a dead body, tahar. The tears that come out of a tamei who's a tamei zav, tamei. The tears that come out of a tamei sheretz, tamei. So it's like the tameh, the liquid, the same liquid that comes out of a tameh of a dead body is tahar, but from lower levels tumah is tameh. It's a counterintuitive. Says the Gemara, says Maishna zav de gazu b'rabbanan, Maishna meis loy gazu b'rabbanan. The answer is zav de loy badili in shemine gazu b'rabbanan. Meis de badili in shemine loy gazu b'rabbanan. The answer is very simple. Chazal understood that people are so naturally afraid of going near a dead body that they didn't need to create the tumah derabbanan of liquid that comes out of him. But when it comes to a zav and a sheretz, which the severity of tumah is not perceived as great, Chazal had to put their foot down and say that if a tear comes out of this person, it's rabbinically tameh. I'll stop here.